Hello and good morning. Welcome back to another episode. Super excited about this one today with my man Andy G up in Charlotte, North Carolina. Andy and I actually met in person, which I was super grateful for him to take some short time out of his super busy schedule for us to grab lunch together the last time I was there. But really excited to bring you him today and talk with him a little bit about his business, but also just the connection that he's made with video marketing specifically across a ton of different platforms. So Andy, tell the people who you are, where you are, what you do, and what makes you different.
Well, first of all, I appreciate you having me on here, and it's good to see you again. I know it's not Cowboy Fish Taco like we went to in Charlotte, but I do appreciate you having me on here. It's always fun to be able to talk to friends about the businesses that we have all grown over the last few years. So I am a residential realtor in Charlotte, North Carolina, licensed in North and South Carolina because we're that close to the border. You kind of have to. I've been doing this for almost 5 years now, and have built up a lot of my business has been built up through Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, all of the social media platforms, and then referrals. And so it's been a huge focus of mine to be able to build up Instagram and some of these other social platforms, because to me, Instagram is my free digital billboard. And so my mindset when I first got started in real estate was all of my clients, or my ideal clients, are typically people around my age working at the banks or wherever in Charlotte and sitting at a computer and scrolling through Instagram and LinkedIn and YouTube all day. And so because of that, I wanted to make sure I was in front of them at all times. And that's where I got really intentional about building out the social platforms over the last few years. And it takes a long time, it takes a lot of work, but it is starting to really pay off. And I mean, that's how we met, was through social platforms. So it's been really cool to be able to build these and to be able to, of course, you show the one part where I can't open the freaking Lamborghini door. But it is fun to be able to build relationships and connections with people and be able to do deals through social platforms. And it's pretty wild how that works. And I would much prefer DMing someone on Instagram than going and knocking on 100 doors. So
100%. Well, and in that video, we saw 12,000 views. So like the time that it takes to put that together, the organization, the logistics, permissions, like there's a lot behind the scenes, but then to your point, there's a lot more that goes on to actually produce that, right? But I think what you just said there is really important, and I hope people didn't miss it, which is it lives forever. Like it's literally there forever. So if you go to YouTube and search Andy G and Charlotte, you're going to see there's a ton of content there. So you get to know Andy better, but also they can go watch it whenever. Like you don't have to be, you could do 1,000 videos and probably call it quits. Honestly, I know that's not how we all think about it or talk about it, but I love that. And I love the fact, of course, that you use social media like I do and trying to build those relationships. Because to your point, it goes a lot further. And then of course, when you meet in person, you kind of get that confirmation, right? Of like, this guy is who he portrays on YouTube and on his famous show and stuff. So anyway, well, tell us a little bit about your business. I mean, you came from the commercial side of things, so a totally different world. Even though it's still real estate, it's a very different environment. So talk to us a little bit about that, the transition into residential. And then what makes you guys different? Like tell us a little more about your process. If someone's looking to work with Andy, or they're moving to Charlotte, or they want to invest in Charlotte, especially, why do they choose you over the, thousands of other agents in the area?
Well, I guess to start, moving from commercial to residential is obviously, it's kind of backwards from the way a lot of people do it in the real estate world. And so I would say that, see, like I said, my text messages are just popping up here. And I have no idea what's going on right now.
All this means, and we're going to keep all of this in here, by the way. All this means is that Andy is super busy. And earlier, before we hit record, I said, so how many closings do you have? 5 today? And he's like, no. I was like, oh, 4. And then he said 3. So we understand, we get it.
But back to the question. So the reason so my kind of path was, I started in commercial brokerage. And so when I was 24 years old, I got my license. I started cold calling commercial real estate owners. I was working at Marcus and Millichap, and basically was 100% commission, and was told that, just go get listings, because working with buyers and doing leasing and all those kinds of things, you're just going to be spinning your wheels and you're not going to go anywhere. And so just go get listings. And after about 9 months there, I made no money, and I literally ran out of money, and I had $1,500 to my name and needed to do something. And literally, which this is kind of embarrassing, like as a finance major in college at Virginia Tech, like when they asked me some of the financial questions, like what a 10-year loan with a 30-year AM meant, I had no clue. And that was when they were like, you're in the wrong place. And so I actually took a job in commercial financing to learn more about all of that. I went from not even knowing what that was to my friend and I, who was the other analyst with me, like we would literally have to build out AM schedules from scratch on Excel based on a certain scenario that our boss gave us, and whoever was done first got to go home. And so it was a complete 180, but the idea was to start learning about stuff that I didn't know about in the industry. And then the idea from there was to go into development or working as like an asset manager for a commercial firm, like a local firm in Charlotte. And in the meantime, I ended up meeting a couple residential agents who really treated residential real estate like a business and not the way that you see it portrayed on TV a lot. And so that was really intriguing to me, to be able to have systems and leverage and be able to just be in front of people and network all the time. Because I love networking. I love being in front of people and talking to people. And so to me, being able to network and stay in front of people all the time while having people help me with the back end things in the industry, that was really attractive. And so that's what brought me into the residential space just about 5 years ago. And so that's where, all these different things that I'm able to do now are for the sole purpose of being able to stay in front of more people all the time.
Yeah.
And then to kind of transition to the second part of the question, or the second question, which is about, people looking to invest in Charlotte or buy in Charlotte, sell in Charlotte, whatever it is, like why me? It's because I obsess over this stuff. And we are like, I eat, sleep, breathe real estate. I'm the guy that gets up at 5 a.m. to go to the gym, because that's the only time that I won't get a phone call. But I'm still texting clients at 6 o'clock, 6:30 in the morning for whatever's going on. And I'm like, I am constantly out and about in Charlotte, but also have the team behind me to be able to make sure that we don't miss things for clients. And my goal is to make sure that I am not the reason that someone can't buy or sell a home, because we're all human and we all have lives. And I want to make sure that I can also have a life sometimes. But that being said, I want to make sure that myself as a whole and the team as a whole are able to help these clients all the time. Yeah. And so I'm also an inbox to zero guy. So like for me, I am a hyper communicator, and that's something that people really like, especially when they're getting ready to buy or sell the biggest purchase or the biggest asset of their entire life. For sure. And so even for investors, I mean, it's obviously still a big deal, because they're trying to make money off of these things. And so that's why people like working with me, is because what I'll do if we get a buyer in, or like a new buyer, I'll put them on a group text with me, the buyer, and then my buyer agent as well. So she and I can kind of tag team. And if I can't do a showing, she can do a showing. But if she's busy doing a showing or in a meeting, I can at least hop in. But we're also on the same page all the time. And that's the big thing, is making sure that like our whole team is on the same page.
Yeah. Well, and what you mentioned there is really important. I think it gets missed by a lot of people, right? Whether it's a primary residence, a second home, an investment property, like there's just different motivations, right? For the investor, it's money, it's return, but it's also the appreciation and a lot of other things that kind of come along with that. And of course, with a primary or even a secondary home, like it's a little more of a feeling, right? Like can we see ourselves raising a family there, or starting a new, business, or starting a new life, maybe in Charlotte. So I'm really glad you mentioned that. One other thing though, that I think is really important, and I think you balance this better than most actually, because you and I both know that there's a lot of agents putting out a ton of content that, are trying to get business as a result of this. And certainly there's a lot of agents that watch this. So I think you strike this really good balance of business and life, right? Or work-life balance, right? But I also think this kind of gets lost on people. And I think that this is really important to point out, because I know I've gotten some feedback about it as well, that if I watch your YouTube and Instagram and what you're doing on Clubhouse and everywhere else, I'm like, how on earth does Andy run a business, right? Because it just seems like you're constantly creating content. Well, call him. That's what I always say. I'm like, call Andy, because I guarantee if he doesn't pick up his phone, it's because he's with another client, or he's in a meeting, or he's in a closing, or he's doing something else crucial to his business. But that was one of the things that stuck out to me when I met you in person, was the texting, the calling, like, just all along the way. And I think that's a big misconception, that you're out all over social, but that you are accessible. And I think that's a really important point. So obviously we got connected through Clubhouse, which, you and I have talked a lot about in the past, but, talk to us a little bit about, taking those relationships, and whether it's a referral partner, or even, someone coming from California or a different area, that, might stumble upon your content. Talk to us a little bit about the strategy there, but also, what are the 2 or 3 common themes that people can expect when they're, starting to follow you?
I mean, the common themes are going to be, I like posting stuff about what's going on in Charlotte, and that's another like differentiating factor, right? I'm out here working all the time, but I'm also out in the community all the time as well. And so that's where, I'll have people who come into town from Iowa, and they're like, hey, where should we go get dinner tonight? And I can tell them, like, hey, based on, if you want this kind of vibe, you should go here. If you want this kind of food, you should go there. Like, whatever people want, like, I can give them advice on different places to go, things to do, stuff like that, because that gives them more of a well-rounded view of me as a realtor, and not just the guy that's going to open the door for them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I like doing that, and I like posting all of that. And to me, it's authentic. And that's the big differentiating factor when it comes to social, with what you're going to see when you're following my social, is it's authentic. And if there's something, like, I'll tell you what, the best engagement that I get, aside from if I like post something that's just wild, like the Lamborghinis, or with a celebrity or something, the most engagement I'll get is when I post something that's awful. Like, whether it's terrible in a house, or disgusting in a home, or like yesterday when I posted I went to show a lake house, and one of our lakes is having like a historic drought right now, and the floating dock is sitting on mud. And you post a picture of that, and people go nuts.
Yeah.
And so, but that's what we do all day. I mean, that's what we're out doing. And so I like posting, and I don't want to just post the big, sexy houses and all the big $2, $3, $4 million houses in Charlotte. It's like, there could be something pretty wild to see in $100,000 house that hasn't been lived in for 10 years. And so I'll post the good, the bad, and the ugly. And that's what people like. Yep. And the reason why I like it too is because you're constantly staying in front of people. And that's the whole idea with all of that.
That's such an important point. And that's one thing that I feel like, again, with like, say, Instagram or Facebook stories, if you go to follow Andy, you're going to see a wide variety of content, right? And price points. And, you mentioned the community earlier. I feel like, and I don't know if you're sponsored yet by Suffolk Punch yet, or have they written that agreement? I'm just kidding.
Oh, but I should be. Oh my God.
Well, no. So, but that's again, some feedback that I got as well, which was, at the time I had a client coming from California, and of course the California dollar goes a lot further in Atlanta than it does in California. But for 2 or 3 weeks there, I was in $1 million, $1.5 million, $2 million homes, and people were like, oh, how's it being a luxury agent? I'm like, this week it's nice, but next week it'll be an investment property that's $200,000, it's caving in on itself and needs $100,000 worth of work. So I love that you mentioned that, because what it can do, and I feel like we've both kind of seen this, or we can agree on this, that when you post one, people think of you for that. But then when you post something completely in polar opposite, and you mentioned the reel of it too, because I feel like that's the great thing about stories, right? You can literally document your day, no matter where you are or what's going on, as great or as terrible, to your point, good, bad, or ugly. I think that's really important. And it also communicates a message, right? And I try to get that type of input from my audience all the time on, like, how does this resonate? Like, if you are an investor, are you looking at $300,000 properties in Atlanta? Because if you go and look at some of the feed, it's like, oh, it's all $1 million properties. It's like, well, that was just that that one window of time, you know. But
Right.
anyway, well, in closing here, Andy, real quick, just tell everyone, obviously they saw all the different socials that you're doing. I mean, if you just go search Andy G in Charlotte, you're going to see everything pop up there. And I think your website, by the way, is phenomenal. I love the
Thank you.
video background. I mean, it's very uncommon to see an agent that's doing that at a high level, because I don't think a lot of agents think that people are going and Googling us, which I don't know what world you're living in, but like that's the first thing most of my
Yeah.
most of my referral partners and actual clients are doing.
Mhm.
So anyway,
And it
Andy,
validates everything when they go
a
to look you up. So I'll give a
100%.
shout out to my guys at Lift Off Agent for that, because they made that site and it looks good.
It's solid. Well, and I don't know who did your logo, but like every time I see your logo on a hat or in the background there, or on your website, or in Instagram, or on a video or whatever, I'm like, that's very distinctive. Like that's very you to me. So
Mhm.
anyway, but if someone's watching this, whether they're an agent looking for a referral partner in Charlotte, a client moving from California or anywhere else in the world for that matter, what's the fastest and best way for them to get a hold of you? And of course, I'll include all your socials down in the description here, but the fastest way to get a hold of Andy.
Honestly, if you're looking on social, or if you're sitting there watching right now and you can get to your phone and go on Instagram, that's probably the quickest way, because I check my DMs all the time. So it's honestly Instagram, DMs, my phone, or email. I mean, my email is pretty easy. It's andy@andyre.com. And then my phone number is pasted everywhere. And so the biggest thing is just like shooting a text, like, hey, I watched this. Hey, I'm following you for a while, like whatever it is. I would say texting or DM or an email is usually the quickest, because if you call, I mean, I will answer every single phone call. And if I don't answer, I'll hit that I'm in a meeting and I'll call right back. And so usually those are the easiest ways to get a hold of me. Because even if people are watching YouTube, typically what ends up happening is they end up going to my website. Then I see that they register on the website, and then I get an email from them. And
Yeah.
so any of those kinds of avenues, I mean, I'm checking everything all day, every day.
I love it. Well, I got this tip the other day in Clubhouse, so you'll appreciate this. If you go to Instagram, follow him first and then send him a message. Because if you send him a message and then follow him,
Yeah.
it may go to requests. He may not get to that one quite as quickly. But Andy, man, I really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much for doing this. And I hope you have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, man. Thanks for
Thank you.
having me.
Absolutely. Really appreciate you, Andy. Thank you so much for taking the time to do that. It really does mean a lot to me. If this is your first time checking out the channel, I really appreciate it. I hope that you would hit that subscribe button and tap the little bell for notifications. I have a ton more of these interviews set up. We're doing one a week around 4 o'clock or so on Friday. So if you have any questions, any comments, if you're looking for a referral partner, other agents that are here, by all means, go to this playlist and search. There's people all over the country we've got coming in. And even Canada and Mexico as well. So I really appreciate you being here, though. Any other questions, comments for Andy, please feel free to leave them here in the comments, and I'll make sure that he gets a hold of you as well. And then, as he said before, go check out his Instagram, doing amazing things with videos. So really appreciate you again, Andy. Have a great